Hello friends, and welcome back to R Slash ProRevenge. And today we have two stories from Reddit, so let's get started. Well, you were warned not to park there. This story happened about 15 years ago, give or take. At the time, I worked for a small industrial railroad in my city that served about 20 different industries along the docks. To get to the docks from the yard where I would pick up the inbound deliveries to industries cars, we had a mile of street trackage that ran straight down the middle of a small street. Numerous bars lined the street on one side with the river on the other side. Because of city regulations, we were only allowed to operate along that span of track between specific hours, typically 11 at night to about 5 in the morning. However, since the bars were open at that time, it also meant that we had to trundle along at a crawl, usually walking pace or just above that, and keep the locomotive on the front end of the movement. Every night I went down that street, there would typically be 2 or 3 people who'd parked too close to the tracks, prompting me to have to get people to move their cars. It wasn't a major problem, just an annoyance. Except for one guy. It seemed that every single night I would have to stop about halfway down because this guy would always park his truck at an angle in the street as opposed to parallel parking. There were some angle parking spaces, but they were further down where there wasn't any rails in the road. Every single night I'd have to head into the bar this guy owned and bug the guy to get him to move the truck. Most of the time it'd take him a good 30 minutes to an hour to drag himself out and move the thing. This meant, of course, I was losing time that I needed to get my job done. After months of this, I finally decided that I had enough, so I decided to have the guy towed. Yeah, that didn't work out as well as I hoped. Turned out the guy also had some job with the city or the mayor's office or some friend in either, so no one would dare come out and tow his truck. I think I waited there a good hour before he eventually came out and moved it, even having the gall to flip me the bird as he left. At that point, I decided that not only was I totally done with the guy, but if the chance arose, I was going to teach him a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. Nothing physical per se, just a hard lesson learned. A couple days later, I found myself heading down the track with half a dozen heavy cars with machinery bound for the docks. As I rounded the curve and neared the place where that guy always parked, I gently applied the independent brakes on the locomotive. This would slow the heavy train, but wasn't enough to stop it outright. At least not quickly. I waited until the very last minute, laying on the horn and applying the full brakes, bringing everything to a screeching halt in the middle of the street. As I felt the brakes begin to hold, there was this loud thunk and screeching and tearing of metal as the train simply punted the truck out of the way, tearing the bed clean off in the process. This did not go unnoticed, as a crowd had started to gather out front of the bar when they heard the train coming. I stay in the cab, calling back to dispatch, and informed them that I'd struck a parked car and they needed to get the police and a tow truck out to my location. All the while, I could hear this guy screaming, heard him over the sound of the locomotive no less, at the top of his lungs about how he was going to have me thrown in jail, sue the company, and all manner of things. Locking the doors, I opted to just wait in the cab for the boys in blue to arrive. Eventually, they pop around the corner and start taking statements. I explained the problem, noting that I couldn't, well, I could have, but it wouldn't have been a good idea, simply slam on the brakes due to the cargo I was carrying, and that the only reason I hit the truck was because it was improperly parked. I added that the gentleman had been warned in the past that something like this could happen and had ignored the warnings. The man, for his part, was simply livid, hopping around, yelling at me, yelling at the cops, and just beside himself. In the end, he was ticketed for his bad parking, obstructing the passage of a train, and his truck was totaled, and he ended up on the hook paying for it. Truck was brand new and not yet paid off, or so I was told. It took about 2 hours to clean up the mess, and I was, per company rules, suspended for a week during the company investigation, but honestly, it was worth it. Didn't have any problems with him from that point forward either. My demotion included a pay raise and 3 months paid vacation as revenge. A little background. At a finance company I was once at in Miami, I was in upper management for a long time, and it was recently sold. Now, I had been at the company since almost the start, and I had created my department that I managed from nothing and ran it smoothly for years as the company grew over time. One of the other upper managers in the loans department actually became the CEO of the company after the sale. No big deal, we were friends, so I thought it would work out great. Boy, was I wrong. What ended up happening is he started firing or demoting most of the upper and middle management, taking away perks and decreasing pay. I was demoted, but I had enough knowledge and connections in the company to know this ahead of time. I also knew they brought in a guy to replace me, paid half as much, no finance background, and I also knew where they were going to move me to in the company, to a much lower position. The CEO became very greedy and just seemed to hate everyone at this point, and that's when I got a plan that would benefit me nicely on my way out on my own terms, all the while my greedy CEO thought he was demoting me. Since I knew all of this, I was able to get a new job lined up, but I had a lot of vacation time left, so I wanted to take advantage of this. Since they had no idea I was planning on leaving, I submitted a request for 3 months vacation to Europe. Now this vacation was 3 months out from now, so it was approved. They soon started having me train this new guy to assist in my department, which I knew exactly what they were doing at this time. I also knew that he was in no way able to run this department, so I just trained him anyway. I could have said something about him not being qualified, but I'm sure my jerk of a CEO knew what he was doing, right? Well, this new guy wasn't able to grasp or really understand what I did. Performance of my department slipped dramatically, as my department was a giant mess with this guy trying to run it, and me basically taking a back seat for laughs. Fast forward about 2 months later, 1 month until my vacation. Next, they moved me into a new department. I hated it, but I knew if I played dumb and said I needed training, even though I knew what to do, I would get trained and have little actual work. That meant shadowing another guy all day and really not doing much work myself at all. All the while, the guy who took my old job was dropping the ball like crazy, and they had me go back in his department to help out once in a while. Which, when they had me go back to my old department, I again played dumb and said that since the new guy was running it, I would just follow his lead, which was a huge train wreck, and he had a huge backlog of work. Then I went on my vacation. They are in no way prepared for me to leave, and I simply turned off my phone for 3 months. And then I returned from my 3-month paid vacation. My department is in flames. The new guy is almost ready to get fired. Greedy CEO calls me in his office and asks me why I didn't train him enough. At this point, my plan was complete, or so I thought. I simply said, I quit, and this is my 2 weeks, and walked out with a smile on my face. I still showed up for work the next day for my last 2 weeks, but greedy CEO says I can just go. No problem. I leave and head home. However, since my department is still in flames, and at this point very difficult to fix, and the backload of work is huge, CEO calls me and asks me to help train this new guy again for triple my hourly pay. CEO calls me and asks me to help train this new guy again for triple my hourly pay, since they now know no one else can handle this and they have limited time. Wow, a nice pay boost for a few days, great. I stop in the next day and do absolutely nothing. However, 3 days later, CEO says I can just go again and they don't need me. The next day I get a call and they really need my help and offer me even more pay to come in for my last few days and help again. Hey, money's money. Again, I stop in the next day and do absolutely nothing until my 2 weeks are up, all the while getting a huge pay increase for my last 2 weeks. I moved on to the new job I had lined up for double my pay and a better position, all the while my old company seems to be going under. That's all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and see you soon.